Hello, everybody. This is fundraising in the context of diversity, and I just got a green book. What a gift. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Do a quick adjustment here. And just would like to introduce, I know you just share your name with me. I'll do my best. Bev Sakauye. All right. And Neki Catron. All right, thank you. All right, this session will be presented by Bev Sakauye, the Chief Development Officer for the National Civil Rights Museum, and Neki Catron, former Senior Development Officer for Individual Philanthropy for the National Civil Rights Museum. And of course, we're all going to go visit tomorrow. We're all excited about that. So noted as one of the nation's premier heritage and cultural museums, the National Civil Rights Museum is steadfast in its mission to share the culture and lessons from the American Civil Rights Movement and explore how this significant era continues to shape equality and freedom globally. I know many of you are excited to visit there with us tomorrow. Please welcome Bev and Neki. Thank you.
Yeah. Are you okay? And I've had my booster, so we're good to go. So good afternoon. For coming. It's really great to see you here. We were really honored to be asked to present to this auspicious group of you all. Thank you. So we represent a different portion of fundraising professionals. It is not a profession that people, you didn't grow up saying, oh, I want to be a fundraiser and work for a nonprofit. But anyway, we ended up, that's where we are. And I think we all have those wonderful stories. And I am at the National Civil Rights Museum. I have been there for 12 years. And it is a passion of mine. And as I know, you have to be passionate about your organization and what you raise funds for. So let me just tell you about the National Civil Rights Museum. Our vision statement is we envision a society where human rights, racial and economic justice are extended to all. The museum, located at the historic Lorraine Motel, honors and preserves the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. We chronicle the American Civil Rights Movement and tell the story of the ongoing struggle for human rights. We educate and serve as a catalyst to inspire action to create positive social change. So I know hopefully most of you will be going tomorrow to see the museum. So we'll be thrilled to have you there. We just wanted to get a little feel for you and where you all work. So at your organizations, are you a development team of one person, or do you have multiple members on your development team? One, okay, over there. Two, one, okay. Two, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's good. That's bigger than we are. So, that's great. Yeah. So at the museum, we have me. We're changing. We have a new president. We're redoing the structure. So senior development officer. I've got some open positions. I have a development associate to help me we have our big Freedom Award fundraising event that we have every year. We raise over $1 million, raise money for our operations, and she and our CFO and I worked together to get information out to our sponsors yesterday. So it takes a whole village when you don't have enough on your team. I see all these shaking heads. Yes. So your mission, how have you all been at your organizations for very long? More than 5 years? Less than 5 years, anybody? Okay, all right, all right. So I don't really know very much about you all, and maybe afterwards we can chat, because I'm always interested in seeing what your organizations do for your communities. So,
Is everyone under the CWR umbrella? Is that what everyone is a part of? Okay. Okay. And so there are different satellite offices that represent the corporate office that you all do development for. Is that what I'm understanding? Okay.
no, no, no.
Membership. Okay. Okay. I love it. Okay. Okay. Perfect. And I think that's very similar. Most people don't understand it. So I used to work for the Boys and Girls Club as director of major gifts and planned giving, and that was the same structure. So you have the corporate office, which is in Atlanta, and then throughout you have the membership areas, and then we represented that local area. So here in Memphis, you have the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Memphis. You buy into membership, and then it's like you're that siloed organization in that area, correct? Okay, makes sense.
So we want to talk about, and all of this is all about looking out in your community. You want to diversify your audience, your donors, and how do you do that? We can give you some hints. We can tell you what we have done, but primarily because we are the National Civil Rights Museum and we tell the history of the civil rights movement, we have a base of supporters who, not all of them, but maybe half, are African American. Our staff of 38 are primarily maybe 80% African American. So we represent the constituency. Do you represent your constituency, the people that you serve? Does your staff look like the audience that you are serving? Because, yes.
Totally.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, 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 yeah. So,
And typically, if you don't mind me adding, Beverly, typically that's what it looks like when you are a part of an organization that represents or supports an impoverished neighborhood. Let's just state it like that. And then you do the work in those neighborhoods. Your donor looks totally different than the individuals that you support. So how do you maximize off of that? How do you encourage more a diverse portfolio of individuals and audience to say, okay, this is how we support this community, and how can we pull those individuals into our portfolio of donors? Because sometimes people give to the affinity that they know and they understand. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about, is how to educate your audience outside of the people that you know, because that's how fundraising started, right? It was who you know, the network, a friend of a friend. Okay, now how do we go outside of the audience of our smaller circle?
and so this diagram here, this concentric circle, this constituency model, which we have really taken from the Lilly School of Philanthropy that started with Mr. Russo way long time ago. But this is how all of us look at our universe. We are, your board, your staff are all at the central core of the universe. And then as you go out, there are people who have less and less direct contact with you. And so what I believe, and you have to tell me what you're trying to do, is pull from some of these outer circles to bring them into your organization, to create a larger donor base of support, a larger base of support that might represent the constituency that you are serving. So I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads, yes, yes. And so you just have to kind of take a model like this and you look at and place it on your own organization and define what the other circles are and where you want to go. The next one is the circles. Oh, no. Yeah.
And you all have this handout. I'll go back. We were just told that you all have this handout in your app. So it should, perfect. Okay, good. So you'll be able to have this handout in your app. And so next we're going to talk about, I love Bev she was so nice and humble to say, hey, I had 12 years, but she has an amazing background of philanthropy, and I wanted to particularly study under her as to grow in that area. So a wide range of working with the National Civil Rights Museum. She's worked with the Boys and Girls Club. So she's worked with a number of organizations that look specifically in one way, but transition to an entirely different organization. So really understanding how to transition from this to that. But when we start talking about, and we call it, when you diversifying your portfolio, I think of it as multicultural marketing. How do you relay this information to your audience and speak to not just the individuals that have an affinity to CWR? That's the key. How do you pull in, because as you stated, it's just your network of individuals that we bring in and say, okay, well, this individual is at, and I want to say this, I want to speak correctly to your organization. Do you call it a church, or what is the correct terminology for? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Membership. Okay, perfect.
They're like AFP.
Oh, perfect. So you're like AFP. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we've been working. We were trying to research, and I love it. Okay, so it's very. I get exactly. Okay, perfect. So you have a great advantage because you can actually pull from different organizations that have different affinities. You can pull from. You have a broader audience that you actually can really bring to the table, and then as well as the work that you do on the ground level. A lot of times, it's not just as Beverly can reiterate in regards to the National Civil Rights Museum. You kind of think, okay, am I siloed to a certain group of audience, people that are interested only in social injustice or inequality, or how do we build that? So we are segmented to a certain group of individuals. So we as well have that same problem. How do we go outside of that group and bring them in? And so that's how you do with the multicultural marketing. How do you speak in a broader sense with your group?
Do you all have like a board of directors at your different, right, same kind of nonprofit structure with boards of directors? So with our board, for example, we have there's like 25 members of the board, and we have about 60% are African American, and then the rest Caucasian. We have one Asian, not me, but there's another Asian on the board. I bring diversity wherever I go. Hey, but we ask our board, as I'm sure you do, for help in identifying people who might be interested in our mission and what we're doing. And so this is just a really ongoing kind of education with the board. We do have a development committee, and I'm sure most of you or some of you do have a development committee of sorts. Sometimes they can be helpful. Other times, but it's with the board, you have to be constantly educating them, giving them opportunity to help where they can. With us, because we've had this certain constituency, we've had board members who will host a small little gathering, a coffee or a tea or a reception at their home. And that has helped us to bring in younger people, to bring in more a diverse audience to the museum. So that has been particularly helpful. We have this new president, and I can't wait until we can invite people to the museum so that I can really introduce him to all of our donors. So usually we have like breakfast with the president or brunch with the president, and so that gives the opportunity for donors to mix with each other and then bond together, and then it gives an opportunity for our president and the development folks to really engage with these donors. But we use none of the things that we do are really unique to what we do. You all do it. It's just that we all have to plan what's best for our organization.
And the great thing is too, which we all know this, because we probably can all stand up here and help each other and do the same type of training, but thinking outside the box. Sometimes we get stuck into, okay, this is how we've always done it. This is how we do things. Okay, well, how can you transition from that mindset each year? Beverly is always saying, okay, Neki, how can we think outside the box? What can we think differently? So this was something sort of that I talked with Beverly when I came on and doing the multicultural marketing and going into those different segments. And with acquisition, I'm trying to hold too many things. So with the segmentation, one thing we wanted to particularly stick with is always emphasize retention. Sometimes we forget that our most loyal donors, I don't know, some of you may can relate to this or not, but when you start thinking about those kids or children that just, they stay under the radar, they do what they're supposed to do, they make the good grades, they do a great job, and you sort of forget about them, especially in the school system. It's just those loyal individuals that you don't have to worry about. And sometimes they can get lost in translation as well in the donor segment. These are loyal donors. We know that they're going to give every year. We don't have to worry about them. Well, that's just not true. We got to make sure that we give them the type of love when we're doing acquisition. So I wanted to reiterate that as we go into acquisition. But the important thing is identifying that audience. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Mm-hmm. It does, those loyalty programs. So ensuring that you identify and find those individuals and how do you steward and cultivate them regularly. Mm-hmm. It does with retention. Mm-hmm.
So with our president, he's gotten involved with our big fundraising event, the Freedom Award, which is next week, goodness, and October 14th. It's virtual, so you can buy a ticket for it. Anyway, forgive the advertisement. But because he's new, he said, I'm going to set a goal and raise it personally. So he's been reaching out to his broad network of people that he knows here and really across the country to raise money. So he's asked several of them for like $5,000, $1,000. So we've had this President's Circle. So now we have Russ's President's Circle of $1,000 donors who we will be able to welcome them to the museum family. Some of them have been our lapse donors, so it's always good to reach out and look at your donor database to see who has lapsed, and having a new president or a new board member or some other event can help you, give you a reason then to reach out to those folks and draw them back in to your circle again. So that's been really helpful, and he's been able to raise some money, 70,000, which is great, yay, because we haven't done that before. So it's really good to capitalize on different events. The museum we have key events throughout the year. King Day for us is huge. It is very huge. We open up the museum to everyone. It's free, all kinds of things. April the 4th, when Dr. King was assassinated, is always a huge day. Then we have Juneteenth, which is now becoming much more popular and widespread. So there are, if you look at I'm kind of getting ahead of the game. If you look at your organization and your calendar, there got to be some dates like that you can tie events to, little gatherings to, little outreach to, solicitations besides your year end.
And so even in talking about society, with acquisition, identifying the audience, but do you all have segmentation programs? So that's one key, and it's really big. A lot of organizations, I didn't realize, did not segment their donors. So putting donors into the planned giving bucket, putting donors into length of service. So these are our 5-year donors. These are our 10-year donors. Also, donors that have certain affinities, pulling those interest groups out, getting to really identify who those donors are. You can really speak a different language with those donors. So, for instance, we have donors that all they care about is the Freedom Awards event. That's all. So we will segment those donors and we will speak to them in that language. They don't care about all the other stuff that we send out. All they want to know is when is the event and who's going to be the honorees that year. So that is very big. So really segmenting those donors. We understand there are certain donors that, for instance, I'm sure some of individuals in here can remember the exact thing in the time and date and where they were when King was assassinated. Some donors really live in that moment. Even my mom, she tells me, this was the year I was graduating from high school, I was doing this, we were at home, and this is what happened. And that's where they resonate with our April 4th event. We speak to them a little bit differently. So really segmenting. And then doing prospect management. I don't know if you have a prospect management program or tool that you can get the donor. I can look at Beverly and I can see everything that she gives to, what are her interests. GuideStar is a really good one. Target Analytics is a good prospect program. And they really give you an assessment of that donor. You can see, oh, not only do they give to us, but they also give to the University of Minnesota. I'm just throwing some things out so you can know education is a big component of them. So then you segment them in their interest of education. And then that's when you start actively soliciting to these donors and speaking their language, because we all received the mailings. I used to work at St. Jude, and the first thing people will tell me working at St. Jude, can you stop your mailings? Like, can you cut off the mail? Because they will receive so much mail, but then they'll receive something that really spoke to them, and then I'll receive a phone call and they'll say, oh, you sent this card and it talked about Mother's Day, and I put it on my refrigerator because I wanted to see it every day. So understanding, okay, this donor specifically is interested in this. And then that way, once you identify that, or you're looking at new donors or trying to broaden your audience, Beverly and Neki looks different from my donor base. How can I speak to Beverly and Neki? Well, Neki is an avid supporter in cancer research. Neki, I'm just kind of telling my interest. She's an avid supporter in social injustice and equality. So what are you all doing within your organization that you can craft a newsletter, a mailing or something that you can put into your strategy plan or strategic planning when you looking at your calendar.
So these circles that join is they're another way of looking at that concentric circle model. And so it's people that you have indirect contact with, direct contact with, like-minded. And so the intersections are where you need to focus on, because you can't just, as we all know, we don't have enough money to send out direct mail to everybody on the sun. So we have to target and segment, as Neki was saying, and use your donors, use your board to, target your donors, target the ones, okay, I know that donor is really affiliated with this group and we really would like this group to become a part of us. So use that donors. Donors like to be used. They like to, feel useful because that they're contributing more than money. Money is critical, as we all know, but for them to also get a feeling that their philanthropy can help your organization achieve their mission, that is really gold, and with the links, we've got, let's go to the next one. So we all use these different awareness vehicles, direct mailing, we do year-end mailing, emails, social media, newsletters. We have a marketing department that sends out a what's happening e-blast, which is kind of a calendar and is sent, and it has everybody, all the activities that people are invited to. Our programs, fortunately, are no cost except for our fundraising event, but they're all free. And right now, since COVID, they're all virtual. So because of that virtual nature, we've been able to expand our audience beyond the Memphis area to really across the country. And we've really been surprised as to how many people from California, Australia, have even tuned in to our programs and kind of have an affinity for what we do. So emails, that's the marketing, but then newsletter, that comes under development. So then we take and report to our donors all of some of the events that were publicized in that e-blast. We've had this event, this is what happened, with a lot of pictures and and I'm sure you all have newsletters and do things like that. It's hard to get a newsletter out. I don't know, it's really tough. I'm having a hard time here. So we try and do it quarterly. We don't specify a actual date. We kind of say spring, sometimes spring, summer merge together. But that, because we have donors still who like to receive something in the mail. They like to hold this, because we have a lot of older donors and you have to do it. Even though we've been trying to wean people away to digital newsletters, it works only to a certain extent. And here again is the segmentation, and we have to better define who of our donors likes the email stuff, the digital stuff, and who of our donors really likes to see and hold in their hand and actually read. So do you all have maybe you all have a better answer to how do you do that? Do you do both print and digital things? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, I can really quick say, um, with social media, and you all are aware of the For You page. So, for instance, recently I was looking at this group called Daily Prayer, and I clicked like, and then all of a sudden, my next post was another prayer post, and so forth and so on. So now in my For You with my Instagram, it's a lot of praying posts that I can share. But with that, identifying, and this is what we've been creative with, we noticed that our purpose is equity for all. And with the unfortunate situation with George Floyd, and I hate to kind of say it like this, but it really opened up a massive audience for us that we didn't have at first, because at that point you saw it, it happened, it was in everybody's face, and everybody got really emotional about it. So we saw an opportunity there to further educate what we do, right? And so looking at these current events or what's going on or how the pandemic right now is perfect for you all, because how are you all stepping up in the current phase of the pandemic, and then sharing that, really having a strong social media background. That's how you get it out. And then once people see that story, that situation, how do you essentially make it go viral? We had some viral situations. Another incident right after all of that with George Floyd. I don't know if any of you may or may not know this artist, Rihanna. She popped up at the Civil Rights Museum, middle of the night, took a picture, said, "Hey, I'm here." We immediately capitalized off of that and put it on our social media segments, and she shared it. So with social media and understanding the tool that it is you have to be out there. You have to be in social media. You really have to put that story. A lot of us in nonprofit and organizations, we right now don't have the bandwidth to put a lot of attention to social media, but it's very important, especially with Facebook, especially that you try and allocate those funds and those resources, because that'll open up a larger audience, and people will say, okay, I really want to give to individuals that are out there helping the homeless, or in changing the story, featuring the sisters, but also featuring who you're supporting, and that changes the dynamic. In working at St. Jude, we notice a difference when we feature the doctors versus featuring the children. That brings in a different revenue and a different audience, because now, I'm not a doctor. I could not saying I don't connect. I don't relate to the doctor. But you show me a child, I'll give all the money. If you show your target group that you are supporting and things that you're doing, that'll say, hey, we don't know who Neki is, but I have an affinity for giving to that group. So how do you broaden that audience and speak differently? And I know we have a little bit of time, but we'll get through it. But there are ways that I'm going to kind of jump through it. But there are ways in stating, like, the communication strategy, recognition, engagement. That's cultivation, stewardship, and we know about that. But I wanted to jump quickly to intentional marketing and talking about education and brand calendar. What is the thought process thinking outside the box? How can we get more donors that look like Nikki, that looks like Bev, that looks like, different types of people? And I know that was the purpose for coming here. Sometimes it's speaking outside, and we know religion is a huge driver, right? That's one of the top drivers for fundraising. That is the everyone gives to a religious group. That's number one. And then you have the other segments under that. But very important, how can I get somebody that's not as religious or really does not connect to any religious organizations? We want them too, because essentially they can help. So when we talk about brand calendar, I worked with Beverly and I sat down and I went through each month and I looked at that month. How is that month important to my donors? What's in that month that I can pull? What do you guys do on a monthly basis that you can pull and look at a different segment of donors? For instance, as you know, King Day is in January, but also Black History Month. How can we monopolize off Black History Month? Because 80% of our staff is African American, majority of our donors are African American because they have an affinity to that. But also, how can I pull in my Asian community? How can I pull in my Hispanic community? We all know right now it's Hispanic Awareness Month. You should right now have some type of mailer or some recognition going to your donors, talking about Hispanic Heritage Month. And also speaking to what you have done in the Hispanic community. That should be what should go to the donors next. Black History Month. With the work that you ladies and gentlemen and everyone in your organization does, do you all have a Black History mailer that goes out? Anybody? That's the opportunity. That is the time. And you're talking about the impoverished community. Let's just be honest. I'm sure in a lot of the communities that you are supporting, there is a high rate of African Americans in that community. Am I correct? You see a lot. And so you don't want to essentially be the savior coming in, right? You want to be the person that's partnering with these communities, embracing these communities. So messaging is another big one. So Black History Month is a great time to highlight those communities and then sending that out. So I guarantee you that's going to open an entire new range of donors to say, oh, wow, okay, you're not speaking directly to the individual in the religious organization or that can identify with the sisters. That is great. We want to keep them. That's how you got them in. But how do we bring in a broader audience? Asian Heritage Month, understanding what speaks and resonates with the Asian group. Identify that month. So really going and digging deep and diving deep into those calendar months and connecting. Because an email is easy to send out, very quick. Mother's Day. I'm sure you all send out a Mother's Day, Father's Day. So what other, and I'm opening it up now before we have to go, and I'll pass it to Beverly. But what is a very, very important month or day for you all in your organization that you kind of really go all out? Like for us, it's King Day. I mean, we go out. Oh. We go all out. What is a very important day that's like really big? Anybody? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. January 4th? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes. Perfect. Yes, ma'am. And that really connects with what we are doing. Think about how that partnership can really say, hey, especially tomorrow visiting, that can be a great follow up with your donor base. Take some pictures, talk about your experience and what you experienced, and then say, okay, this is what we're doing, and please share. Yes, ma'am. I know your hand's been up for a minute.
we can't do it either. So. Yeah. Yeah, and look at the people you are serving, who they represent. And I'm sure you do this. Tell their stories more, because that is how you lift up those other constituencies. That is how you get donors to engage more and buy into your mission and what you are doing. So in your newsletters, in your emails, in your social media, lift who you're helping, because it's really, people are donating to support your organization, but they're really donating to make an impact on your community. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we get focused on money, and numbers, but we have to go back to what the mission is and what you are doing, what your organization is doing to help people and focus on those people. And that's nothing new, but that's something that I know sometimes I forget, and I just have to remind myself. Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. It really is. It really is. Yeah. Right. Yeah. hmm Right. Right. And they all have different um, focus areas, features that they really like about your organization. That's the segmentation. And so you had, mhm. Yeah. 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 Right. Exactly. balance. It's a two-way street, and it's not just the organization, it's the client, your customer, your constituency that you're helping. It's your donor. So all of that has to be taken into consideration. And it's not easy. What we do is not easy, but it's so, for me, very fulfilling. It really is. So I know that's part of why I've been in this field for 50 years. And so it's really important to have this passion for your organization and what you do.
And I think we didn't go too far over. But again, just to reiterate, and remember, and that's key. I'm going to start using that, the integrity of your organization. That's very key. And then your loyal audience, like you stated, and in the Memphis area, believe it or not, a lot of our donors are very conservative. And you will be amazed at some of the information that resonates with our donors. You would think, oh, that's a very conservative donor. And then you find out that that donor is highly connected to the inequality movement or the equality movement and things of that nature. But again, they're loyal donors. So you don't want to upset that donor and lose that donor, because that's a donor that again, is that annual giver you can rely on. So you want to make sure, as Beverly and I stated, that segmentation. But when identifying those new donors, you'll be really surprised at the donors that you can acquire just by tweaking the message just a little bit, creating that brand calendar. I really believe in a brand calendar, like really looking at each month and what I can do within that month for my donors, what makes sense. Like January 4th seems very important, so I know you all go out, go big, and that's January is a very important month. Okay, do you pull? Most of your resources is going to go to January. Now, what can we do in February? What can we do in March to attract new donors as well as lift up our other donors? So I love a brand calendar. I don't know if you all have a separate marketing team, but I work in tandem with the marketing team with that brand calendar, so they can understand and they can help me send out that message that sticks to our talking points and who we are. And then really, and I'd say what's really amazing that helps is creating, and I don't want to create new work, but creating a multicultural portfolio. And then segment those donors and say, okay, if I want to acquire new donors, but for the most part, and one last question, what is your audience, the majority of your audience in your donor base? Is it majority conservative, white, America, that type of audience? Okay, so how do I tap into, because as the young lady in the back stated, you may not have an Asian segmentation because it just doesn't make sense. And it's okay, but does it make sense to have an Asian segmentation? How do I acquire those audience? Does it make sense to have an African American segmentation group? How do I acquire that audience? How do I speak? Just thinking outside the box, because sometimes you're missing a huge amount of money out there just because it's just kind of thinking about just day to day. So I would just encourage creating a multicultural portfolio. And I can guarantee you can bring in a lot of different cultures just by the work that you're doing. It's phenomenal, the work that you're doing on the ground. I mean, Peru, think about the audience that you can pull out that is like, oh, they're doing all this work in Peru. I really want to get behind that. Has nothing to do with the sisters. I hate to say it like that, but it's just not. It has nothing to do with the sisters. It has nothing to do with the religious segment of the organization. It has everything to do with what you're doing in Peru. Helping the homeless. I'm giving because I know the work that you're doing with the homeless organization. I want to make sure you do that, and I want to make sure you do it in a bigger amount. Just looking at that separate audience and really connecting and speaking to that audience. And it takes a little bit more work, but how do you speak to that audience? Because I can guarantee you, if I receive something from you all and I see a picture of a sweet little kid and you tell the story that child without you all wouldn't have dinner that night or hasn't eaten in several weeks, but because you showed up, now they're having 3 meals a day. Oh, I'm writing a check immediately. I'm sorry, I came in and I really didn't understand fully what CWR, and I didn't realize you had different memberships and things of that nature. But if I receive that in the mail, I'm instantly writing a check. So, any questions for us? That's our information. I hope we were really helpful. I didn't want to keep you all, but I really wanted to say thank you for having us. Beverly and I were really excited. I'm so excited because, as it stated, I was formerly working with her. So we haven't been able to see each other for a while and get together. So thank you all for bringing us back together, and thank you all for listening and actually giving great advice, because I was looking and like, oh, I was taking notes. I'm gonna take it back myself. So.
And I know in your WhatsApp, I wrote a chapter on retention for a museum book, so that's the article is there for you, so you can have that. You have our emails. Please feel free to ask questions. What time are you all coming? I don't know what time your tour is for tomorrow. Anyway, I'm going to try and come out and make sure I have time to come greet you as you are arriving at the museum. So, we really appreciate that, and thank you for coming to visit the museum, for coming here to hear us and share your experiences, because we all do it together and grow together. So thank you again so much. We are so appreciative of the work that you all do for your various communities, because they couldn't exist without you. You're integral to them. So.
And we have, if you look under, well, I see that you guys didn't sit in our chairs. So we put a little special things under chairs. And I'm looking under the chair. No one's sitting in the chair, but I'll give a hint. There is a special something in that row, and you two ladies, there's a special something in that row. If you look under the chair, we taped something for a prize, but nobody sat in the chairs.
This is a DVD of The Witness. It won an Emmy Award, and it is Reverend Kyle's, who unfortunately is not with us anymore, but he tells the story because he was there with Dr. King in Memphis at the time, because Dr. King was preparing to go to Reverend Kyle's house for dinner. And so he tells this wonderful story, and Reverend Kyle's amazing person, and he would come to the museum and plant himself at 306 and tell the story to our visitors. And that's where we have an advantage over you all, because we have a museum. We have people who come from all over the world, across the country. And it's going to be a while before we're back to the 330,000 visitors. Last fiscal year we ended up at a little over 100,000, so we are building back up. But thank you for increasing our numbers. And oh yeah, the Green Book. So I'm sure you all know about the Green Books. Anyway, yeah.